What's going down, everybody? It's your boy, that guy Mile High, 20 back in for another one of them reactions. This time we got top 10 terrifying people who were born evil. I think the question is can you be born like good or evil? Like, isn't that kind of all based off of like your experiences and the things you kind of go through in life? And, aren't there a lot of variables to that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just not convinced that you could just be born evil. Can you? Maybe you can. I don't know. Anyway, let's record the screen. Let's figure this out. Hit the full screen. And, yeah. Let's go.
Are we inherently good, inherently evil,
oh, look.
or a mix of the two?
She asked the exact question that I asked. Like, all right, I'm glad that you asked that question because I was already questioning that because of the title. I was the very first thing that I thought is that even possible to be like bad or good? Like at birth? Like, is that a thing? Is it possible? Well, the fact that you asked the question means that you're going to explain and you're going to give me some answers. So let's go.
Age-old question, and while I don't have the answer, I do have 10 people who absolutely suck. From terrible leaders to serial killers just some plain old regular people who did horrific things. Here are the top 10 terrifying people who were born.
I like how she just said, like, they just inherently sucked. Like, he was just some shitty ass people. They sucked at being a person, like a human, and just fuck them.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have Nero. To start off this list, we are going to be taking
Nero.
It back
That just sounds like
the age of the Roman Empire. When we think back to these times, they weren't necessarily the most kind, peaceful of times, but there certainly are some characters that stand out as being particularly brutal, and one of those is Nero. Throughout his reign, he wreaked havoc on the Roman Empire, he burned cities, he killed thousands of people, including every member of his own family, and I mean, we know
he was mad about being named Nero. Like, come on, man. Like, that's a fucked up name to give a motherfucker. Come on.
Inventive execution methods of the past, so you can probably guess at just how brutal these all were.
He got teased his whole life for his name, and she was like, fuck, I'm gonna kill everybody.
Negative review of him in reference to both his personality and his reign as a leader. He was called compulsive and corrupt, and it is believed that he is actually to blame for the great fire that burned Rome, but instead he used the Christians as a scapegoat so that they would receive punishments rather than him. Real stand-up guy. In the end, after being declared a public enemy by the Roman Senate and realizing that the rebellion would be lost, he ended up taking his own life at the age of 30. In our number 9 spot today, we have Robert Pickton.
He was troubled.
This horrible person is one of the worst Canadians to have ever lived and is one of our country's worst serial killers ever. Pickton dropped out of school and began working at his family's pig farm, and this is where most of his absolutely horrific crimes took place. He was first arrested in 2002 and was convicted in 2007 of taking the lives of 6 people, but throughout an extremely lengthy investigation, evidence of many more killings came to light. During his time in jail, an undercover police officer posed as his cellmate, and Pickton confessed to 49 crimes to him. Apparently, he was saying to the undercover officer that he wanted to take one more life to make it an even 50, and that he only got caught because he was sloppy. The entire trial was a mess, but that is some crazy.
Motherfucker said, damn, I was right there. I was right there. That's like he was like he was like when Floyd was going for that number 50. You know what I'm saying? When he was going for number 50 so he could be 50 and 0. You know what I'm saying? He had to fight for it. You know what I'm saying? But unlike Floyd was able to do what he had to do and put himself in a really great position to go ahead and guarantee that there was really no way that Floyd was going to lose like those last 5 fights. Like he was fighting some very, we could face it. Like there was some inadequate components in those last like 5 fights, maybe even the last 10. There was some questionable ones, all right? They weren't the best of the best. But the reality is he still got 50 and 0, you know what I'm saying? And it is what it is. But oh boy, he didn't meet the mark. You know what I'm saying? He fell a little bit short. He got sloppy.
A life sentence without the possibility of parole
that's crazy,
for 25
bro.
years, which was the longest
that's
possible
nuts.
sentence under
to even think that could be a goal.
This unfortunately does mean that he will be eligible for parole within the next decade, which is a terrifying thought.
How the hell do you get what? Bruh.
Being eligible doesn't mean he's going to get it, so there's always hope. In our number 8 spot today, we have Delphine Lalaurie.
Bruh.
Delphine was a New Orleans socialite who was an evil person behind closed doors. It is said that in public, Delphine was polite and appeared as if she cared for those who were enslaved in her home, which is truly the most bizarre sentence.
That is
I guess back then, that was considered being a good person. I digress. Delphine's social standing remained until on April 10th, 1834, authorities responded to a fire at her Royal Street mansion. When they arrived and went inside, no one was prepared for the horrors that they were about to see, as they discovered bound slaves in her attic who had clear signs of violent behavior over a long period of time. Following this, her house was swarmed by an outraged group of New Orleans citizens, but somehow Delphine was able to escape with her family to France. While the angry group destroyed her entire home, Delphine never faced any punishments for her crimes, which is probably the most frustrating ending to this entire story. In number 7 spot today, we have Alexander Solonic. Alexander was known as Alexander the Great, but I'm not sure if great is the word I would use to describe him. He was a Russian gangster who was a pretty notorious hitman for the Russian criminal world. He started out as a member of the Soviet army, but he was quickly kicked out for his violence towards suspects. He actually ended up in prison for some of the things he did. After 2 years, he ended up escaping, and this is when his contract killing career started. After a few years of living this life, he was apprehended by the police.
I'm about to say, I guess, what else are you gonna do at that point when you just kind of living life on the run and you need some money? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, living life ain't free, whether you know, out with your freedoms or you out here on the run trying to, you know, act like you're free. Like, you know what I'm saying? Either way, it gonna cost you money. You know what I'm saying? It's not free. It's not free. You gotta get some money somehow. So I guess, you know, being a contract killer was the answer. Bruh.
Once at the station, he revealed a small automatic weapon that they had failed to find on him, and he opened fire on the officers.
Oh, damn.
He ran outside where he hit 2 more officers, but he ended up cornered and hit by a shot himself. After being jailed for a second time, he ended up escaping from prison again.
Bruh.
And this time, he disappeared. He was later found in Greece with a fake passport, and it was here where he started his own little gang of around 50 men, which were, of course, all involved in shady activities. In 1997, however, his body was found just outside of Athens, and this time the tables had turned and he was someone else's victim. Authorities found evidence that he had been hired to carry out a hit in Italy before his death, and these two things just may be correlated. In our number 6 spot today, we have Elizabeth
somebody needed him gone and out
Elizabeth
the way.
is a former registered nurse and serial killer who was responsible for taking the lives of 8 and attempting to take the lives of another 6 senior citizens who were under her care. With a total of 14 victims that either passed away or were harmed by her actions, she is now one of the worst serial killers Canada has ever seen. And not to mention how she was doing these things to vulnerable people that she was supposed to have devoted her life to taking care of. Her first victim who passed away was James Silcox, who was 84 in 2007 and was a World War II veteran. She committed her crimes by injecting insulin into her patients. In September of 2016...
didn't they make a movie about her? I think they made a movie or a TV show about this lady.
Ended up entering herself into a drug rehabilitation program at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, which is located here in Toronto. It was here that she ended up confessing to her horrific crimes. Of course, the staff at the hospital notified the proper authorities, and she was subsequently arrested, and she gave police a 2-hour-long confession. She admitted to knowing that what she did was wrong, but she said she just had urges she couldn't control. She stated that, quote, God or the devil or whatever wanted me to do it. In the
Fuck out of here. You just sick at you crazy bitch. Fuck, what the? I guess she had to say something for her to get the insanity plea in fucking court, but goddamn, you crazy bitch.
In prison, but because of the way that the Canadian system works, at some point she will be eligible for parole. In our number 5 spot today, we have Pedro Lopez. Pedro is a man who lived a life committing some of the most horrific crimes I've ever even heard of throughout South America in the 1970s. By the time the 1980s rolled around, he made a mistake during one of his awful crimes, and this led to his arrest. Once in police custody, he began to basically explain his entire life story, and he confessed to an astronomical amount of crimes. People were a little skeptical of just how many crimes he said he committed, but Pedro was able to lead them to a mass grave where they recovered a total of 53 people's remains. Pedro, of course, went to jail, but get this, he was somehow released in 1994. I'm like, great. Just before I was born. Nice.
I
He
was
wasn't sent home
born
straight
2
away
years,
and instead was sent to some sort
before he
of
was
mental
released.
institution for 3 years, but he was also released from there. Okay, so aside from the crimes he committed, are you ready for the worst part? In 2002, he was suspected of being the perpetrator of a new crime, but no one has been able to find him since 1998. Yeah, he disappeared. Awesome. In our number 4 spot today, we have Ilsa.
I mean, the apple ain't gonna fall far from the tree when you used to. I mean, you got away with 53 bodies, dog, and then just like slipped up and just kind of had a bad conscience. Let me clear my conscience of these 53 real quick. Let their families go ahead and, you know, whatever. And then I'm gonna keep pushing. I'm gonna go, you know what I'm saying? I needed to clear the space. I needed space for these bodies for the next one. Like, get the fuck out of here. What did you expect?
Ilsa is a war criminal who oversaw concentration camps that were run by her husband, Karl Otto Cook. She is well known due to her sadistic and brutal treatment of prisoners, and she became one of the first well-known people that committed these types of crimes to be tried by the U.S. military. It is said that those being held at the camps with distinctive tattoos, Ilsa would take a piece of their skin as souvenirs. When being charged with her crimes, they included things like private enrichment, embezzlement, as well as taking the lives of some prisoners to prevent them from testifying.
About souvenirs,
in the original trial, she was acquitted
damn.
for lack of evidence, although her husband was sentenced to death by an SS court in Munich. After a few more trials, however, she ended up being sentenced to life in prison, and despite multiple appeal attempts, she was never released. In our number 3 spot today, we have Joseph Stalin. Stalin was a Georgian revolutionary and Soviet political leader who governed the Soviet Union from 1922 until his death in 1953. Despite the fact that he started his time governing the country as part of a collective leadership, by the 1930s he had consolidated all of the power and went on to begin acting as the Soviet Union's dictator. During his reign, Stalin was responsible for the deaths of over 60 million people, 20 million of them being his own. Apparently the math works out to be about 1,000 people per week, which is truly unbelievable. It is worth noting, especially since this list is about people who were born evil, that there were good things that he did at some point or another. I mean, Stalin's forces did start out as an Axis power in World War II, and he did help us out a great deal and helped to bring down you-know-who, but in the end, that good can't eliminate the harm that he did. Also, before he was in power, it is said that as a young man, he was a robber and an assassin. For almost 30 years, he reigned the Soviet Union with terror and violence. I mean, his decisions led to famine that killed millions of people alone. Also, the lives he took weren't just of enemies. I mean, how could one person have 60 million enemies? He would take the lives of the families of people he liked. He just took too many lives, was too paranoid, and while he was powerful and smart, he was also an absolute monster. This is all perfectly summed up when he said, quote, "One death is a tragedy, a million deaths is simply a statistic." In our number 2 spot today, we have Pol Pot. Pol Pot was the leader of the Cambodian revolutionary group called the Khmer Rouge, and this group, with him at the forefront, went on to try and destroy Cambodian civilization. This wasn't necessarily how the group started out, but once Pol and others who shared his ideas came to lead it, things quickly became dark. He is likely one of the only people who ordered a mass genocide in his own country. The reasoning behind all of this is because he believed that destroying the civilization was the best way to start a new regime and bring in a new age. He ended up serving as the prime minister from 1976 until 1979, during which his policies led to the deaths of around 2 million people, which is horrifying. That was about 25% of the entire population. He even liked to keep the skulls of those he had killed. I'm just gonna say, it seems as though politics was the mask for someone who just really wanted to kill. There are so many horrific details surrounding him and the things he did, some of which I can't even repeat here on YouTube, and that is exactly how he landed a spot here on today's list. He truly did some horrendous things and in the end went on to live the rest of his life and died of natural causes before he could answer for any of his crimes. In our number 1 spot today, we have Heinrich Himmler. Alright, this is one real piece of work who was very active on what we'll call the bad team during World War II, and he is actually one of the people who really helped to create and build the Holocaust. He was the head of the SS and he controlled concentration camps, and you want to know what he was best known for? His organizational skills and for picking the best subordinates. Yeah, they really liked him because he was able to pick the other best, worst people ever to work with him. That's absolutely insane. Say opposites attract, but in this case it was just terrible people joining other terrible people. He believed that certain groups of people, like Jewish people, were unworthy of living, and he himself ordered the deaths of 6 million.
That's
it is
fucking
completely
nuts. Like, how the
unimaginable
fuck can
just
you
how
just
evil this
kill
person
millions
really
of
was.
people,
This
bro?
hasn't exactly been verified, but it's something that's been said for years, and that is that he had furniture made from the skins and bones of these people. In the end, because...
Bruh, you gonna sit on my new sofa made out of human skins, like... Does our skin even leather, like, you know what I'm saying? Like hides and shit, like cowhide and shit. Like, does it leather? Like, what the fuck do you mean even? What the? Oh, bruh.
Was nothing but a coward. When things for him and his party started to go south, he tried to have open peace talks with the Western allies behind the back of you-know-who. Of course, he found out and had Himmler dismissed from all of his posts and ordered his arrest. This led Himmler to trying to go into hiding, but he was detained and then arrested by British forces once his identity became known. To make this story even worse, while in custody, he took his own life because, of course, he didn't want to answer for his terrible actions. All right, guys, that has been our terribly dark list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out.
That was crazy. Go ahead and check out Most Amazing Official. Man, that shit was nuts. Bruh. Man, it's a lot of terrible people. Can't say that they was necessarily born evil or good. That's still going to be a question that we just aren't going to have the answers to, and that's just what it is. But we can definitely say that there are some shitty people, some very shitty individuals in this world. Yeah. So, yeah. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.